All right, so that brings us to a roundtable discussion. Let's bring in Tony Schaefer, Michael Walsh, Ryan Mauro, and Brian Dean Wright as well. They're all experts in their various fields. We've had them on earlier. We want to talk a little bit about, Tony, as you listen to the Admiral right there, do you agree with him?
Well, absolutely. Look, I would so far as hazard to say that some of these plans have been on the books since General Mattis was commander of Central Command. And I think we've been looking at this issue, a set of issues, for a long time. And let's be very clear here. Part of what had to change was not only the perception that the United States would not act. That's been changed now. But what was worse, Steve, and as you know, is the self-deception that was put forth by Secretary Kerry and the old administration saying that the weapons of mass destruction were gone. That was a fiction. Yeah. And so the American people were buffaloed. What's worse is the people living in the region may have well thought, hey, we're safe now. They weren't. So I think this is important. And again, I am not a guy that believes in the unmitigated use of military force. This was precise. This was meant to send a very clear message, not only at the tactical level, but to the strategic level, to China, to North Korea, and the Iranians, that we're back.
Lieutenant Colonel Waltz, on the military side, these strikes, which appear to be successful, we're hearing now that 20 aircraft were hit, none Syrian aircraft were able to take off. The American people waking up to this reality that this indeed happened overnight. What's your message to people saying, hey, how far does this go, where does it end, and how successful was it?
Well, I think it was incredibly successful. I'm proud of our president. And I think, the happiest Americans around the world today, with the exception of those Navy sailors who got to fire those missiles, are our diplomats. For the last 8 years, they've had a few carrots and no sticks because in negotiation after negotiation, we pulled the most powerful military in the world off the table before they even walked in the room. So from North Korea to Pakistan to Libya, our diplomats are walking into those negotiations now with a little more swagger and knowing that the U.S. military hasn't been neutered, that's standing behind them.
Guys, I'm being told we are just getting a new video of Russian drones immediately after the attacks. This is what those drones were picking up. I'm not sure if y'all can see this, but this is from the Russian drones. My question to you, Ryan, is will Russia discourage Assad from continuing these types of attacks, or will they support more attacks, more of the chemical attacks?
My guess is that Russia would say you need to hold off on this because it's counterproductive and it's an unnecessary escalation. But the question then remains, well, what about the massacres that are committed with non-chemical weapons? And that's a question that President Trump is going to have to answer, because it's very possible that the next test for him will be Russia, Iran, and the Syrian regime coming together and saying, well, let's try something different. Let's massacre a bunch of civilians and see how the United States responds.
Absolutely. Brian, so going forward, the big wonder is, after we dropped those 59 cruise missiles in there yesterday, how Russia, how Syria today are going to react. We know Russia's got the drones over looking at the bomb damage assessment. We would expect that. But what do you think Russia is going to tell Syria today?
Well, I think Putin is very upset and angry that this happened. He has effectively been pushed into an embarrassing situation. So he's going to have to respond to save face for his own regime, right? So you're seeing that one of the first reactions is him withdrawing from the pact with the United States in terms of deconflicting over the skies in Syria. Russia has announced that they're withdrawing from that. So I think you're going to see those kinds of things for Putin to try to save a little bit of face. And then behind the scenes, you're going to see them reaching out to folks like Trump and our Secretary of State saying we need to figure out a way to get out of this together.
We had Ryan on earlier in the program, and Ryan, you have an important detail regarding this particular airbase that I haven't heard any of the other intel people tell us about. We not only took out a Syrian Air Force base, we took out a terrorist airstrip, right?
Right. You could go so far as to say this was not just an airstrike, or not airstrike, cruise missile strike on the Syrian regime, but on the Iranian regime, specifically their terror network, because this base is known to have been used by Hezbollah, a terrorist group that killed more Americans than any other terrorist group up until 9/11 and is likely to kill Americans again. And how do you feel about having Hezbollah in the same location as chemical weapons? That's a very dangerous scenario. So there is a national security argument to be made here.
Ryan, are terrorists using the other airfields? Because we were told there's 6 airfields. They are. So going forward, do we need to take out those last 5?
Well, let's first wait and see how this settles, because we want to see the reaction here. I don't want to immediately go to 10 on a 1 to 10 scale. But yes, you better believe that there are plans for that, and that's likely going to be the American response if Assad continues to use chemical weapons or escalates in terms of massacring civilians to the point where we have to act to show that the rules that we were playing by before just aren't there, and you're dealing with someone new.
Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. A very smart, what is it, a group of 4 quad box. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz, Tony Schaefer, Ryan Mauro, and Brian Dean Wright. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, live here in the